So, hello and welcome. This is Headlocks and Headphones, another short burst. Every time there's a big wrestling story, we're going to try and actually go and do some kind of reaction video to it, even if it's just me, but we will try and get somebody else involved. So, Stuart, have you been following what's been happening in wrestling the past few days?
Not really. I've not really had a chance, obviously. Well, I mean, that's a big save with what's going on and being locked up and stuff like that. But, yeah.
Wrestling probably one of the last things on your mind beyond keeping your mental health in check and making sure your dog's okay, your partner's okay, which is kind of what everybody's having to do just now. We're all having to kind of keep an eye on each other. And on that note, one of the interesting things over the past 24 hours is that Vince McMahon's been hired by Donald Trump to help as part of an advisory body that's going to actually kickstart the economy when this is all over, which is, you know, here's a guy who set up his business, nearly was bankrupt at the point of WrestleMania 1, nearly bankrupted again 10 years later in 95. So there's a couple of interesting things coming from that. I can see from your face you're thinking, well, that's a bit weird. So Linda McMahon is actually a small business advisor for Donald Trump already. The McMahons already have that history of working with Donald Trump, WrestleMania, where he hosted two of them. Yeah. And there's also the fact that Donald Trump was in the storyline where he bought Raw. There was also the fact that he was actually in a match at WrestleMania, or he was a second at ringside, but he helped shave Vince McMahon's head. So that leads into something big that's happening. Now I'm refreshing the page because they keep adding to what's happening, right? But there was a report this morning came out where they were talking about the fact that they weren't allowed to film WWE TV shows at the Performance Center. They didn't have permission. And then all of a sudden, they were granted essential media status, which coincides roughly with the period where Linda McMahon donated $18.5 million to the state. But that's not even the story we're looking at today. Although I want to address something here. They just donated $18.5 million to Florida, which gave them the ability to record live TV shows in their state, right? Which in itself should be a big story. The bigger part is they announced earlier today, much like you're experiencing right now, many WWE performers, WWE employees would be put on furlough and there may be job cuts. And what they did was they announced that, you know, like the outside contractors that they use, the advisors and stuff, they would likely have their contracts cut. They have already. They announced the new WWE headquarters would be delayed, which would save them about $130 million. It's not being saved, it's being basically delayed payment until later on because all the workers aren't really doing anything anyway. But they've also done something which really shocked me, and I'm hoping when you hear this, it's going to shock you as well. They've released 8 wrestlers. And the name...
You saying this, it's kind of making me think that it's like talent either they've not used or that's not really doing much. But with this whole random call, I reckon it's going to be guys that are quite high up, maybe mid-card type stars.
At the start of this story, and I expect it to get bigger. And I'm going to try and go from the bottom of the list to the top. Okay, but what's quite interesting here, more importantly, is one of the names is actually booked to appear in the interim cruiserweight tournament tonight. Another one's a former cruiserweight champion. There's tag champions in there. In fact, there's several of them. In fact, there's quite a few of them. There's one who, quite frankly, it was coming because, in fact, 2 of them, because they haven't really done much. So let's start at the bottom of the list. We've got EC3, Eric Young, Leo Rush, and Heath Slater. Those are the names that you're looking at and thinking, well, they're not really doing much on TV, even though, you know, Heath Slater's got kids. How's he going to feed his kids now?
I got kids.
Kurt Hawkins, who was a tag champ in the last 6 months. Drake Maverick. And they just added, right before I started speaking to you, 2 guys that they just signed to 5-year deals. Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows. more coming.
Wow.
They're stating that there's more releases coming today, which to me is just they're doing this to save money, and I get it. A lot of these guys will receive a little bit of money now, and they can go and work on the indies the second that this is all sorted. Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows probably going to go to Japan once the restrictions are lifted. But
then, if they're doing these cuts just now, how are they going to get to work on indies if no one can put on shows?
Yeah. So this is like, what's interesting.
Screwing these guys over. Okay, Vince is going to get to keep his money, but yeah, he's putting what 8 guys out
so far, and this comes just several days after. Remember last week, the hot shot I did last week was about the Revival being released, and this was after they'd basically said they were going to sit at home for the rest of their contracts. They'd already extended whichever one of the two it was that got injured and was out for a few months. They already put that onto the end of his contract, which they legally can do. But this is the 8 names that have already been released. They've already released some directors and producers. And as we speak, they've just added Aiden English to the list and Kurt Angle.
Wow.
I mean, that's insane. I mean, you know that Kurt's always going to be welcome back, but you know, most of these guys, this is the end of their WWE run. They're never going to be back. And it's alarming for me that they can donate $18.5 million to the state, which gives them permission to record TV shows. But then they have to cut budgets, so they sack, you know, Kurt Angle, who would be a great coach for these guys in NXT, Drake Maverick, who they just booked to be part of their cruiserweight tournament, Kurt Hawkins, who's a former tag team champion, who actually has his own internet show talking about collectibles, which is actually getting really good numbers. Somebody that should be popular. Carl Anderson and Luke Gallows, 2 guys that they literally, and I'm going to use a phrase that I think is brilliant, but they spunked money at Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson to get them to stay there for another 5 years so they wouldn't go to AEW, and then they released them.
And then they screw them over by letting them go.
Yeah. it's like those... Do you know, it's like in football. I don't know if you know much about what's happening in Scottish football right now, but it's, to use a wrestling term, it's a clusterfuck. So they're trying to have a vote on deciding whether the league's going to end. And basically, Dundee had their vote lost in the digital system. And then when it allegedly showed up, they decided to cancel it. And then you have Rangers, my club, accusing the SPFL of corruption. But football, we'll quickly mention something in football. The equivalent of what they've just done to each and every one of these wrestlers is fired them in between 2 transfer windows, knowing they can't sign for a club. They're going to be sat at home making no money. So I would be looking for... certainly Drake Maverick is an entertaining enough guy. He's going to be on YouTube in the next 24 hours doing something entertaining. Oh, yeah. Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson will likely do something entertaining, and it will likely involve, you know, Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks. Heath Slater, Eric Young, EC3, Aiden English, they'll likely just kind of go on to the indies, I think, and do their thing. I think Leo Rush is somebody who, if he were to go to Japan and have matches against people like Will Ospreay, that would just blow my mind.
I can see that happening. Leo Rush not having a big career this far, I reckon he could have a very good run with Will Ospreay.
When you look through that list, Anderson and Gallows, they'll be welcome in Japan easily. Drake Maverick is one of those, he's far too small for most companies, but having seen him live and seeing how much he connects with an audience, there's a wasted opportunity to get something happening, especially when you've got a company that has, you know, Bobby Lashley, who has 0 charisma, when you have so many other guys.
He's got the body that Vince loves.
And is that maybe a problem? Because you look, one of my favorite WrestleMania moments involved Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. It was the Boneyard match. And okay, they were supporting cast members, but you know, the company, if they should have got rid of, you know, Eric Young, EC3, Aiden English, and possibly Heath Slater, just as par for the course. But when you start cutting guys you've just spent nearly a year negotiating 5-year deals with, there's a lot of
Given a
issues.
big WrestleMania moment too.
Yeah. I mean, for me, if this list is expanding enough to add Kurt Angle, uh, for me, there could be more names that come that could be very shocking. Because I think, Kurt Hawkins, why is Zack Ryder not on that list? If they're sacking Kurt Hawkins, I certainly would say Zack Ryder is on the same level as Kurt Hawkins. So let's speculate. Do you think there will be more names released here? Because there's certainly enough guys in developmental to fill out the roster.
I think they probably will. Vince being the kind of money-hungry guy that he is, he... try to think of the best way to put it. He's happy enough to put millions into something that'll get a lot of publicity because he's backing Donald Trump. So that being the case there, if he's letting guys go, he's going to be saving, umpteen millions there. So with the whole publicity thing going right across the world, he's going to get money from that story in some way, isn't he?
And the thing is, one of the things that's kind of alarming is, okay, they're not running live shows, but quite a lot of the live shows weren't making money. So Vince McMahon will be actually looking at his bottom line, and the revenue will be down, but so will expenditure in many ways. So actually, the company probably benefits from having a break from live shows, because you know what? All these live shows that come as soon as everything's back to normal, these shows are going to be jam-packed. Every single one of them is going to be sold out, and he's going to be shipping in crates of merchandise to sell. And it just seems like, there was an argument that ICW was downsizing when they moved from one building to a smaller one, and then they split it over 2 nights. But the fact they split it over 2 nights, and they actually appear to have been trendsetters, because Vince McMahon did the same thing during a time of change. He followed the same idea that Mark Dallas had at ICW. It's going to be a hell of a time to be a WWE wrestler, because Leo Rush posted about an hour before he was released saying to his workmates, whatever happens, we're still a family. So by all accounts, this morning there was a call amongst from Vince McMahon to the wrestlers, and basically they were told there would be cuts. So I think people are right now. There is a story going around. I can't remember who it was, but one of the guys who they used to every year post WrestleMania, they would do like a round of cuts, and they would cut those people that weren't doing anything, but at least one of them would be completely off the wall. And then one of these batches of cuts was Drew McIntyre and several other guys. But there was one guy, it might have even been Kurt Hawkins the last time he got released, where there was actually a period where he thought, okay, I'm fine, I haven't been released, all these names are up, and there's now been a couple of hours, and then he called about something else, and Mark Carrano said to him, oh, has nobody phoned you? What do you mean has nobody phoned me? Oh yeah, you got released today at like 2 o'clock. What do you mean you got released? How can you release me without telling me? He's like, oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, you've been released. So there's the likelihood, WWE have put out a statement saying that these cuts are real. It's not rumor. This has actually come from the WWE.com website. It's also on their corporate website as well. So this is, I think it's to try and satisfy shareholders who are worried about expenditure. But
in that case, if you're wanting to make cutbacks while all this is going on and you've not got a crowd attendance, why not get rid of the higher paid guys? Because if you've got them, they've got plenty of money to see them through for a couple of months anyway. So if you're letting Taker's at the end of his career anyway, so why not just be like, look, Taker, why not just sit back? Yeah, let him go. That's another couple of million in his back pocket.
He's not going to go to AEW or anything. He doesn't have the desire to work any type of schedule. But even if you want to make further cutbacks than that, let's have it. So if the shows are being filmed in Florida, let's use the Florida-based wrestlers, which is NXT. NXT guys are all sat there, all on such small wages compared to the main roster. And all you do is you supplement them with guys that stay nearby, and then you have special appearances via webcam, via media link, whatever, from guys like John Cena every week. So you have something to tune into. Because at the minute, you're flying guys all over that country and you're spending all money, and then you're sacking all these people saying we need to save money. It's just, if you have to.
It's not like young guys that haven't got any talent. These are guys that have talent, guys that are great on the mic, that are awesome in the ring, that have just got so much character and charisma. And they're getting, what, a fraction of what the other guys are getting?
I mean, if you happen to be booking an indie show in America or the UK anytime, say, late summer, this is a really exciting list to be looking at and thinking, well, I could have Anderson and Gallows on my first show that's happening in the Central Belt of Scotland. You could have, Leo Rush come in for a tour of the United Kingdom, which I guarantee you would get massive success, particularly as a guy who actually does rap music as well. But yeah, this is just one of those moments where you look and you think, do you know what? Coronavirus, COVID-19, it's shit. This whole situation is messed up for a lot of us. But then you have billionaires donating millions whilst sacking people to save millions. To me, it doesn't make sense.
It makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, thank you for joining me, and the look on your face of just sheer dumbfoundedness perfectly encapsulated what I thought.
Just why? Just why?